You made it. You have it all the life you want, except you're missing something. Welcome to The Guy Show, featuring the experts giving you the tips, tricks, and tutelage in wellness, lifestyle, and all things guy, and for the gals that love them. We're here to answer your questions on the things you want to know about. Welcome to The Guy Show. I'm super stoked for today's episode. We have Summer Bock here. She is a trained herbalist and master fermentationist, and she's the founder of Guts and Glory. Summer's mission is for everyone to have stellar health naturally by healing their digestion using herbs, ferments, and food. Her background in microbiology and pre-medicine has given her the perfect skill set for integrating the modern research in the microbiome with her traditional studies in herbalism and using food as medicine. She's a certified integrative nutrition through Columbia University. She's the founder of the Fermentationist Certification Program, the Probiotic Power Cleanse, and Gut Rebuilding. She is a three-time Good Food winner for her sauerkraut recipes. Summer, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I love you and I love guys. I feel like this is the perfect place to be.
If you love guys and you love me, this is the place to be.
That's right.
Well, we love you. Your work is just amazing. You have so many successful programs for helping people. What kind of got you into that fermentation process?
Well, I was super duper sick and I didn't know what was wrong with me. I actually wasn't clear that I was as sick as I was. I know that sounds kind of strange, but I did a cleanse while I was studying herbal medicine, and I was about 5 days in. Mm-hmm. It was sort of like an elimination diet / cleanse, and it was whatever. 5 days in, I felt like a wool blanket had been taken out of my brain.
Oh, wow.
And I looked around at the crystal clear world around me, and I was calm. I had no anxiety. Nice. And it occurred to me, oh, this is how normal people feel. And this is how normal people function. Right. And this is why I'm so dysfunctional, because I never feel like this. So that was this huge awakening, I would say. It was a big, big moment in my life. I go back to it regularly and think about everything before then. Mm-hmm. I just thought it was normal. I thought it was normal to lay on the couch all day. I thought it was normal to be moody and grumpy and grouchy. And I thought it was normal to be covered in hives and rashes. It was just like an allergy. I have allergies, So I had all this stuff going on. And after I got done with that cleanse, I realized I need to feel like this all the time. Mm-hmm. So it became my mission. How do I feel like that all the time, but still eat chocolate?
Yeah. Still have the good stuff in there.
Right. Exactly. And so, fast forward a few years, I'm in school, I'm getting more and more stressed. I'm also becoming more and more aware of the dysfunction. Mm-hmm. So, this wasn't the beginning of, oh, Summer's now healthy. This was the beginning of awareness of how sick I was. And that path continued for a few years of me being like, wow, I really don't know how to get back there. Mm-hmm. And, oh my gosh, this is bad. I'm really sick. Mm. I had bloating, I had digestive issues. I craved sugar. I would eat a pint of ice cream every night. And if I didn't have sugar in the house, I would still just drive to the store and grab some. Wasn't that far away. And I remember going down the laundry detergent aisle at the grocery store and getting nausea, headaches. I couldn't ride in people's cars if they had perfume on or if it was a new car. I was multiple chemical sensitive. I had all sorts of issues. And then my allergy season increased. It was 3 months, and then it was 4 months, and then it was 6 months. So I felt like I was allergic most of the year.
Oh, that's nice.
And anxiety, panic attacks. I know I'm going here. I'm not exaggerating. I'm giving you the light version of how miserable it was.
You had the everything scenario.
It was all the funky stuff that you go to the doctor and they're you're healthy.
Mm-hmm. We can't find anything wrong with you.
I heard that so many times.
Yeah. Yeah. And you kind of boiled it down to gut health, your gut being a major issue with that. So, why really is gut health so important? We're hearing a ton in the news, the gut-brain connection, the gut-body connection. What's so important about it?
Well, it was interesting because I actually went to my doctor at the worst moment, and she goes, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "Well, here's what's going to happen. First of all, you know more about this than I do. Second of all, I'm going to write you a prescription. You're not going to fill it, and I don't think it's going to do anything anyway. So what are you doing here?" And that was the moment I went home and was like, "Okay, this is 100% on me. Stop trying to have somebody save you." And that's when I stopped taking all the different herbs for stuff. I stopped taking all the different supplements and kind of threw everything out except for focusing on the gut. I kind of heard it through the grapevine. This was back before you could Google
Yeah.
gut health, probiotics didn't come up with anything, you know?
Yeah.
And so I figured it out. Okay, gut health, we're just going to start there. And that's when I started looking at how can I heal my gut naturally? Because, you know, I'm an herbalist. I'm trained as a purist in a lot of ways, you know, and I asked myself, you know, what's the whole food version of probiotics? Because I learned a little bit about probiotics. They've got to be good for me somehow. Fermented foods have probiotics in them. And so through that experience, I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep down this path. I started making tons of fermented foods, all different kinds. Went a little crazy, of course, went a little extreme.
Why go small when you can just go big, right?
I mean, you go big. We're Americans. We go big. We supersize everything.
Supersize ferments.
That's pretty much what I was doing. It was nuts. But, you know, it was that experience of like realizing when I started focusing on my gut, my allergies cleared up. My rashes cleared up. You know, I focused on my gut and I was having anxiety go away and all of a sudden feeling balanced. I mean, it was just, that was a real life experience of, okay, I actually see night and day the clarity of this connection between the gut and your overall health.
And it's so true. I mean, the gut is that gateway to everything going on in the body. And when that's off in any way, you know, whether it's yeast or bacteria or fungi or parasites or viruses, it's going to create that scenario of that immune response and creating everything you experience. And it is in today's world of modern medicine, they don't have a way to figure that out other than like, well, we can't find anything wrong. But there is so much testing that can be done to really help do that too. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the testing is interesting because I think on one hand, it can give you more clarity, but for some people, they find more confusion. And in my practice, you know, I do still think that there's a time and place for testing. I'm not saying it's off the table for me. I'm just saying, really, when it comes down to it, I'm still going to focus on the gut.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like we can test to figure it out, or we can just kind of treat it and go with it. And I bet you we're going to get a huge response of feeling better in the long run there.
That's right. Absolutely.
Now you ferment a ton. You've established that already. You do a ton of fermentation. What are your favorite foods for getting probiotics from the ferments into the body?
So one of my absolute favorites is fermented veggies, hands down. I mean, there's very little chance that you're going to be allergic to it. You know, you're fermenting basically vegetable matter, usually cabbage, and you add some salt, pack it down in a crock, let it ferment for anywhere from like a week to 6 weeks, something like that. And throughout that time, you end up with about 13 different kinds of probiotics that are growing in there.
Nice.
And, you know, it's a little bit more diverse. It's wild. We're not adding a starter culture. And so you're actually getting the wild organisms that were growing on that cabbage that are now proliferating in this food. And those were bacteria that were once in the soil. You know, they were once hanging out with the vegetables in the soil, and getting those in your body is crucial to having great health. I mean, that's the one thing that we're missing with a lot of the food today. And I hate to say this, but even the organic food today, it's still not being grown in the healthiest soil possible. And this is why I'm a huge supporter of going to a local farmer's market, getting your veggies there, fermenting them. You want the thing that is the closest to just balanced natural ecosystem as you can, versus these stripped down like mass monocropping farms.
Yeah, and that's such a huge thing of growing your own there too, or the smaller farm having better soil through there and not having to pump so much chemicals into the ground itself through the plant to get it to grow in those scenarios. So basically plants on steroids, and you know, that local grown better environment because it's where you live. So better bacteria for where you live. And I'm sure, you know, people notice that when they move, and I'm sure you've seen this with clients as they move from one part of country to another, how that changes their digestion and their florals also.
And their food cravings. You know, I think that your bacteria really determine your food cravings. You know, when it comes down to it, there are some nutritional needs that your body will let you know about. But for a lot of people, those bacteria are running the show and telling you, well, they were telling me I needed ice cream all the time. But you know,
they needed ice cream all the time.
They definitely did. Those little candida, they wanted some ice cream. But, you know, once you get healthier, you actually do get messages from these bacteria, the better, healthier bacteria, that are saying, hey, I do want more fiber. You know, I actually do want more plant-based foods because that's the food that they live on. And the benefit to you from that is that your body is now going to get a source of vitamin B and vitamin K being produced on site by bacteria, absorbed instantly into the intestines. And it's just so much easier to get these vitamins in the way that nature intended. Because if you notice, vitamin B is a great example. You have to take like 10,000, I don't know, it's like 10,000 micrograms. I don't know, it's a massive amount, but and then you look at it, it says like 5,000% of the RDA. You're like, why am I taking 5,000% of something? Because your stomach acid breaks it all down. Your liver will actually break it down before it can even be used. So in order to get the amount of vitamin B12 and what I'm talking about that you need, you have to take a massive quantity in hopes to get the small amount that your body actually needs. Whereas when you have the right bacteria, they're producing it in your gut for you, So I think that taking fermented foods and especially sauerkraut, kimchi, fermented veggies, and getting them into your diet, I'm going to say at least a few times a week. I'm not a proponent of like downing kraut or downing kimchi massively every day, 3 times a day. Maybe if somebody's just taking antibiotics, they can increase the amount that they're eating. But if you look at traditional people and you look at traditional diets, these foods were primarily used as a condiment. And I think that, that really ties back into what I was saying earlier about supersizing it. We have learned that like, bigger is better, more is better. In the case of ferments, that has not been my experience. You actually want consistency and stability in your diet if you want to achieve health. Your body needs to know what to expect. And when it comes to ferments, when it comes to all these living organisms, you want to let your body know, okay, here's the same ones again. Okay, here's the same ones again. Here's a little bit more. If you do too much at once, you'll see gas and bloating. And for some people, it can just be uncomfortable. And I think that actually some people can really overdo it if they're eating way too many fermented foods. And I've seen people who had gut imbalances. I don't see this happen with healthy folks. Okay. I see this with people with gut imbalances. They eat way too many fermented foods. And I've seen them go into an imbalance where they either develop SIBO or histamine issues if they take it too far fast.
Yeah. Again, just like we were saying, it's that supersized scenario of like, if a little bit's good, have more. And then all of a sudden now you're creating even a worse scenario than what you started with in those imbalances in the gut flora or inflammation in general in the body.
Absolutely. Well, I have a ton of other favorite ferments, but, I will mention probably my second favorite is, I like coconut water kefir. Oh my gosh, I just said kefir. I usually say kefir, but I was trying to sound all like I know.
You were thinking of Kiefer Sutherland.
I was trying to sound like I know what I'm talking about. Kefir is, I think that's the traditional, I know that's a traditional pronunciation. I always say kefir, like kefir.
Everybody in the world says kefir.
Yeah, kefir. So then there's the coconut water kefir. I like that one a lot. And I also think that dairy kefir made in the traditional way, using these little gelatinous scobies, they look like cauliflower that are like clear jello cauliflower. To me, dairy kefir is actually one of the premier ferments. The bacterial and probiotic yeast makeup of this food is just outstanding. And there's been tons of studies done on it from babies all the way through, adulthood into the elderly. And so people have had a chance to see how this works for thousands and thousands of years. And the miracle of kefir grains is that we can't create them on our own as humans. We can't make them in a lab. That's not how it works. We actually have to pass them down from person to person to person. And we've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years. And that's how we have kefir. So if you get your hands on some kefir grains, which you can find them online, there's lots of places to find them. But if you get some, you're knowing that this has been passed down by another human. And I find that kind of lineage and the history behind this stuff totally fascinating, because it lets us know that like this has been around for a long time. Why? And really fermented foods came about because it's the oldest form of preservation of food. You had to have food last when you were nomadic, or if you were, going through the winter time, through the famine, you had to have vegetables, or you had to have milk not spoil. Right. We created all these different ways to keep things preserved. We didn't go, we need these probiotics, and I think that's it's good that we're learning about probiotics, but I still think that we have to look back in time and say, okay, wait, but why were people doing this? How did they do this? When were they eating these foods? And adjust our own schedules and eating a little bit more to match that. I find people get a little bit better results that way.
Yeah. And, interesting, like you're saying, the pass down from generation to generation, the energetic knowledge in that kefir itself, or any of, if it was a SCOBY from something else, that energetic knowledge of that time, just going through there is just epic in proportions of how, thinking homeopathically, just that energy itself is just immense in there, and how well it can help somebody just by the product by itself.
I think it taps you into something new too. I mean, well, something old. I really do. I notice that as people start to get their microbiome healthy and eating ferments, it changes the way that they relate to the people in their lives. I feel like they start to take on this attitude of symbiosis. I feel like they start working together better with the people in their lives. And I think that they also start to gain an appreciation for the environment around them, because they realize, you're not just supporting yourself. It's the environment around you that's actually keeping you alive.
Yeah, we're definitely in that balance, and that we're seeing that in today's society. Definitely that individualism, so to say, of not being in balance with everything around you, and that affecting the negativity around you too.
Oh, I mean, it's problematic. I think, when you see that kind of imbalance in your life, and you kind of create it essentially, and then, when you see that, it really just makes things worse. And I think that when you have imbalance in your life like that and negativity and things, you end up stressing yourself out more. You're not being as high functioning and productive as you could be. And when you're stressed out and you're not handling the everyday things in your life, and you're, having chaos with relationships, things like that, that stress literally translates into neurotransmitters and hormones that are being produced throughout your bloodstream, throughout your tissues. And guess what? The bacteria that live in your gut can read that. They read it like text messages. That's what I call hormones. I'm like, hormones are text messages. And the bacteria, they're on Verizon, and the humans are like on AT&T. And it doesn't matter. We're on different carriers. That's cool. Guess what? We can still text back and forth.
Yeah. And really, it's that, like you said, that symbiotic relationship is, I'll nerd out a little bit here because, Star Wars is going to come out again here. But, that midichlorians, that same thing is that balance of energy producing bacteria within us. Same thing. If it's off balance, it's going to have problems there of how the body functions, and that interaction of people too through that process. And we've seen that in research with veterans coming back from Gulf War, and then also there in currently the Gulf War situation too. The bacteria of that area of the earth itself is different than here. And what we've seen, and they've done some studies on this, it's pretty fascinating, that when Gulf War veterans come back, that bacteria changes how their nervous system's functioning. And they've done studies with their bacteria, and they see it actually passes on to the members of the family too. So even as you're infected with something or changes your bacteria, will affect other family members, and the bacteria in their GI system will change also too.
Isn't that interesting? I did a whole webinar once about kissing in the microbiome, and like how we pass on our bacteria to the people around us, just through normal everyday human contact, not even intimate contact, like literally just normal everyday human contact. You are absolutely passing that on to each other. And, it's profound. There's some really interesting stories too. This kind of goes towards a tangent of thinking about how sterile our environment is, and how in our culture today, we really try to put antibacterial gel all over children. I see people still all the time, they touch something or they do something and they rub their hands with antibacterial gel. And nowadays there's not triclosan in it, which is so bad. It's usually just alcohol, but still it's literally, I look at that as a message when I see somebody do that. And I'm sorry if this is you, but I literally say to myself in my own head, you don't trust your body, do you? You don't trust yourself, do you? And maybe you don't have reason to trust yourself if you're not well enough to stave that bacteria off, but you really should be healthy enough and strong enough to be able to be around somebody sick and not get sick. Exactly. To be able to handle something that's maybe dirty and not have that contaminate you. Your microbiome, if it's strong enough, it will withstand. And so I have a real hard time with the level of sterilization in our culture. In fact, I went to the dentist yesterday because I have to get my wisdom teeth taken out. And I really don't want to, but they were like, yes, and here's the thing, and then we'll prescribe you antibiotics. I was like, if in case I get an infection, they're like, no, we get everybody to take the antibiotics. I was like, you prescribe precautionary antibiotics?
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, yeah, to everyone. And I'm like, I will not be taking those. And like after having this conversation, she started asking questions. I started telling her what I do and, you know, my whole side of it. She was genuinely curious, but this is still happening right now.
Oh yeah.
And it's a big problem because, you know, even after taking antibiotics one time, guess what? You can alter your gut microbiome for life.
Yeah. Yeah. Hugely, hugely, hugely. And who has done just a single course of antibiotics?
Yeah, very few people. My friends who grew up on a commune.
Right, right. If they even had it then it was herbal probably at that point.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, the effects, like I think I had an extreme version of it, honestly, because I got to a pretty bad place. But you know, the common everyday ailments that people are dealing with that let them know that their microbiome is off is that they're going to the drugstore and buying any kinds of, you know, like digestive aids. You know, people on Metamucil, if you're taking Tums, if you're, you know, any of these things that are considered pretty normal over-the-counter medications indicate that the microbiome is off. If you're getting sick, I say more than once a year. If you're getting sick more than once a year, and really even then, I mean, a healthy person should be getting sick less than that. But if you can work towards getting sick once a year or less, then, you know, you're definitely in a good place. But most people aren't. They're getting sick at every season change and chalking it up to heredity.
Yeah, my mom was that way. My dad was that way. My uncle, my aunt, my grandma was that way. Yeah, it's like, no. That means your flora is messed up.
This is not normal. This is not how humans used to be, and it's not how we have to be. And the I guess problem with that is it means that you don't feel good a lot of the time. You know, energy levels are going to be low, brain fog is going to be high, depression, anxiety is going to be higher, because these bacteria also produce all the happy hormones and, you know, happy neurotransmitters to make you feel good, right? Yeah. They don't produce the hormones, but they produce the neurotransmitters. Yeah. I misspoke, but yeah, I mean, I think this is so crazy. So I have a story to tell about the Hadza people.
Yeah.
So you're talking about people coming back from war, and the Hadza people is like a group of people that have not had a lot of interaction with modern day civilization or society. And so they were studied, they took a lot of stool samples. They, you know, took a lot of samples to find out what's going on with these people. And somebody, you know, I don't remember who led this study, honestly. I think it was like through the Food Project, this guy through the Food Project. And he went out with them and he went hunting with the guys. The ladies all stayed at home. They were like doing their thing, whatever, by the fire, hanging out with kids. No joke. And then they went out hunting. They grabbed an animal. They chased it all day long, grabbed this animal, kill it. They totally like chopped apart all the meat, like butchered it on site, got it all ready, like put it on their backs to take back. And then they cut open the intestines and they all wiped down their hands with all of the contents of the intestines. So all of the basically fermented grass. Yeah. That's covered in probiotics. This is what they used as their natural hand sanitizer to get all the blood off of them. Yeah. Right. So then they go home and they hand off the meat and they're touching and they're kissing. And now they're spreading this probiotic mixture all over everybody at camp. Right. Like, okay, this is a very interesting story because that blows the lid off of everything that we think about in terms of sterilizing and keeping things clean and bleaching things. They're actually using probiotics in the way that they're meant to be used. They're antibacterial naturally. They crowd out pathogens. You know, if you have the right ones in the right places all throughout your body on the outside and the inside, their job is to keep other organisms from growing there. And they'll do it really well as long as you're not inhibiting them at every turn. Yeah. So I don't know. What do you think about that story?
No, I mean, it sounds crappy. I had to throw a bad joke in there. I mean, it interesting process there. You know, the GI tract is a relatively sterile environment unless there's infection going on there. From that fact of infectious type material that would cause that. So it makes sense. that using that to clean the blood off, because the blood's going to attract certain bacteria. There's usually not bacteria in blood, but the bacteria, that blood itself is a medium for bacteria to grow on. And so, yeah, you're putting in that process of putting in huge amount of beneficial flora on there to fight off anything that could grow.
It's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I mean, I don't
we'd be like gloves, gasoline, turpentine, get all that stuff off me. I'm not rubbing poop on myself.
Well, and here's the thing, like, I don't necessarily hear that story and go, okay, I need to go like rub intestinal contents all over my hands.
Yeah.
But what, and they're using the grassy parts, like in the small intestine, before it's, turned into anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I take that and I say, okay, how am I living in my everyday life that's contributing to messing with my microbiome on my hands, on my skin? I touch my hands to my mouth. You know what I mean? Like, how am I impacting that? Let's vote, baby. And so, I've changed a lot of the way I do things. I'm not using crazy harsh soaps anymore. Mm-hmm. I will actually just wash my hands with water a lot, especially if I'm like dealing with food. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's just so many opportunities. Like if I'm like cooking, I don't need to wash my hands with soap in between each time I touch something. And when I get out of the shower, I usually use like shea butter or olive oil or coconut oil. I just put on like a very simple 1 ingredient oil, let it soak in, let that feed the organisms on my skin. I don't put these scented things and lotions and, I don't want to put alcohol and things like that on my skin. I don't want to dry it out. I don't want to mess with this. And I think about that with food too. What's the simplest way to bring in food that's not going to mess with my microbiome? And, my friends, they don't always know what to do with me when I sit down at their table to eat dinner because, I'm kind of picky.
Yeah.
And I'm not picky in terms of the variety. I'll eat a huge variety of food. I just don't eat junk. I won't eat junk anymore. I mean, I'm at the point now where like, I don't even want to go out to eat because I just don't want to eat canola oil. I'm so over canola oil. I mean, there's so many junk ingredients in food today. And to keep it simple, like cook with butter or olive oil and eat some veggies and eat meat and like just stop adding all of this junk and these extra ingredients. And it's everywhere. I live in the South. And so I feel like I get a really great taste of mainstream food. It's here. This is what normal people get exposed to. And, it's
deep
not
fried everything.
Oh yeah. Deep fried and glutenized and, everything's got a lot of dairy in it. And, I don't think that dairy is bad. I don't think meat's bad, anything like that. I just think we need to bring it back to simpler ingredients. And if you're pulling it out of a can, pulling it out of a packet, you're getting all of these additives. And, a lot of what's added to food that's on the shelf, any food that's sitting on the shelf that's just hanging out, it has preservatives in it.
Yeah.
Guess what those preservatives do to your microbiome? They kill off these organisms. It's not good for it. So when you kill off microorganisms, here's what happens. I do want to add this part because I think this is an important piece. So when you kill off the microorganisms, you open up prime waterfront real estate. It's like kicking everybody off the whole coast of California and being like, okay, you guys get out of your house. Whoever can make it there first is going to live there, right? And whoever makes it there first in your gut is generally going to be the next food that comes in through what you eat, right? That's the first path that it's going to come in. And if you've been taking antibiotics over and over again, there's likely fungi growing in your gut and they don't get killed off by the antibiotics. So they're still hanging out. And that's the first ones that get right there to that prime waterfront real estate. And so then they start communicating with your cells and they start, talking to your immune system. And they're like, hey, ignore me. I'm cool, right?
I'm good. Leave me alone. I'm fine.
Which is actually, for a lot of people, this can be a trigger for autoimmune disease when you have pathogenic organisms communicating with the immune cells. This is where it starts. And then you have these organisms that are now pathogenic, that are growing, in unchecked numbers throughout. And that's the problem. Because now you have endotoxins being created. They are literally excreting their byproducts. And the reason a pathogen is called a pathogen, it's less about the actual organism itself. It's more about their excretions. Their excretions, it can be extremely toxic to us. So some of these excretions start getting, pushed out into the intestines, and now they get absorbed into the bloodstream, and now they have to get filtered by the liver. And I call it the human sewer situation, because it's like you are now a human sewer for this metropolis of bacteria and fungi that are living in your gut, and your liver is the water treatment plant. And so now your liver is doing a whole bunch of work that it never signed up to do. It's just supposed to be there to, hey, detox the normal stuff and keep your hormones in check and, keep you happy. And, right, and now it's doing this whole other job. That's when people start to see the decline in health. And this is what I consider to be the real start of chronic disease.
Yes. Yeah. And the number of cells in our GI tract itself for bacteria there outnumber the number of cells in our body.
Yeah, there's so many, and they're tiny. And really, I think what's more fascinating than the fact that there's more bacterial cells than human cells is that there's more bacterial DNA than human DNA.
Yeah.
And so the bacterial DNA is what's actually like allowing the communication to happen, right? So that's where you develop the bigger problems, right? You have all these bacteria growing that shouldn't be there. They're in charge. They're running the show, and they have direct access to your brain.
Yep.
They communicate right to your nervous system through your gut, goes right to your brain and tells you what to do. And you're like, I'm going to bring it back to the ice cream, people. Yeah. And then I'm like, I'm not going to eat any sugar today. I'm totally not going to eat any sugar. And at 9 p.m. I am in the car and I'm like driving to the grocery store and I'm like in the car. Yeah. And like, why? Because they're telling me to do it. It's not my willpower. I have no issues. And I really don't believe I have issues with willpower, because truth be told, I can will myself into pretty much anything. But when those bacteria or those yeasts are screaming that they're starving and you haven't fed them for 24 hours, it turns into a nervous system emergency.
Yeah. They're starving. They're starving. They want some food.
They want some cookies and ice cream. And
they want some sugar.
Noodles.
Summer, it's been amazing having you on here. We could go for hours and talk about this stuff. We got to get you on again because you're so knowledgeable on everything. Your website, summerbock.com. You have several websites too, because you have many different programs, right?
I do. You can find everything at summerbock.com. It's all linked up there. I also have a great webinar at gutrebuilding.com where you can check out the 3 mistakes that most people make when they try to rebuild their gut and what to do instead.
Good. Everybody, check out her stuff. Go to her website. Get on there. Get on her list for her information. She's so amazing. I've known her for a little over a year now, and she's a good friend. I love her dearly. Summer, thanks for being on. Any one last tip, trick, or tutelage you want to add for anybody?
I think the last thing I would say is trust your gut. Really learn how to trust your gut. And that's the process, but learn how to trust your gut.
Yeah. Hashtag trust your gut from Summer. Great. All right. Thank you very much. We'll see you all later.